Hi, ladies, gentlemen, and NB peeps. Welcome to Radical co-founder Candour. Today we're going to talk about our origin stories and share a little about who we are. This isn't because we think we're uniquely wonderful people, but because we think anyone, or definitely a lot of people, are capable of doing what we've done and starting their own business, at least in something. So I wanted to show how diverse the three of us are. And how we ended up where we are now. So, who wants to start your origin story?
Mine's probably the shortest, if that helps.
You should
Right,
go
the
first.
youngest. So.
Yeah, my own story. I don't know. Yeah, like background. Most interesting stuff was when I was at university. I did an engineering degree and realized very quickly I did a year in industry where I did a 4 years of my degree. Took a year out as part of it, and spent the whole year realizing that I didn't want to do engineering, and then had to go back to uni and finish the final year, even though I knew I didn't want the degree and I didn't want to do the job. So that drove me to want an alternative, which was software. So I put top of my priority. I was like, I want to move to London. Second to that is I should probably get a job to help pay for that. So I got an interview with Adaptivist, and that was my first role as a consultant there. And I remember I was super keen. I did the Atlassian like Dragon Slayer thing where you set up your Jira Confluence servers. And then I got the t-shirt, and that's the t-shirt. I'm not wearing it today, but that's the t-shirt I wore to my interview with Adaptivist, and that was really cute. So yeah, did a couple of years there.
And you skipped the bit where you were in the Royal Air Force.
Yeah, I did some Air Force Reserve stuff while I was at uni, and that was pretty formative in terms of I did most of that. Helped get over the fact I didn't want to be at uni, but the Air Force stuff was cool. So I did lots of flying, a bit of flying instruction as well, lots of military training and various things, which was cool. But yeah, was at Adaptivist for a while, and then decided that I wanted to move into products. I saw pretty much the inspiration was I saw automation for Jira. I was like, wow, these guys are great. Is it, is that something I can do? And then, yeah, turns out that we could. So that's when we started Old Street. So that's the abridged version of how I got here.
Turbo American tour of Europe.
Yeah. So,
Jacek,
really
who wants to go next? You or I?
Yeah, you go next. You got an interesting story.
I got a longer story. Put it that way. I didn't go as direct. So, I don't know. I feel like I'm a bit of a paradox, like in many ways. So I'm a bit of a gentle giant. I always succeeded at rugby because I'm fucking massive, but never really identified with any of the jocks. I was much more comfortable hanging out in the computer room, learning to code. I was sort of too British for the international schools I went to in different countries, and then when I came back to Britain, I was too foreign for them to really get along. So yeah, I've never really felt I've belonged anywhere, and so I've always had to go at myself. I always say when you're like the tallest person in the room, being shy isn't an option. So that's definitely made me who I am. I grew up watching my dad work far too hard, so he sort of did that classic American dream story of going in the company at the bottom, and working his way up. Like, so he never finished school, and yeah, just started literally putting stuff on the trucks was his first job, and then ended up like vice president, country manager. So my life was always sort of changing. We went from very poor to quite rich, and the main thing I remember growing up was how absent he often was because he was working so hard. And so I decided, like, obviously looking up to my dad, but also wanting to do things a bit different, was like, I'm going to have my own business. And then, yeah, had the opportunity in Thailand to start a scuba diving school and an eco-tourism company working with turtles. And yeah, within a year, like, that was very big and successful and making loads of money. And I was like, awesome, what's next? And you realize, like, the joy of that life is also its limitation. Like, there wasn't really a next step. So I tried desperately to do too many things in Thailand. I should have come back to the UK long ago, but I just really wanted it to work. I wasn't prepared to admit defeat. And so, yeah, I stayed longer than I should have, trying some weird ass things, trying to make a business doing, I don't know, events or set up a language school or like anything, just hustling. Because I knew, and I was absolutely right. When I came back to the UK, they wouldn't respect that I'd grown a company to 25 staff and however much money we'd made. They'd just see me as another beach bum who'd done a gap year in Thailand. So. And very much so, came back to England, and it was falling back down to earth with a bang. I'd gone from running all these companies, managing all these people and events, and having the time of my life, to cycling to a cold calling job, living with my parents. But the reason I came back was always because I knew I wanted to get into software and start my own company in that. So Clear Vision was my break. That's where I met Jacek. Me and Jacek were very like-minded. Because all we talked about was starting our own business and having a little side hustle. And then shortly after that, I met Tom, who likewise had a similar vibe. So that's how the three of us met.
That when we met was it was my last day at Adaptivist.
Yes,
the very last day, and unfortunately, no one would go to the pub with me.
I felt a bit sad for you, if I'm honest, mate. Like, I was like, oh, it's your last day. When's the leaving party? And Adaptivist has this massive pub culture. Like, they are sometimes called Adapter Pissed.
That's all we can do is comment on what it was when we were there, and there was the whole like it was a culture of being friendly and being social. But yes, unfortunately, due to circumstances that I fully created for myself, there was no leaving party, and I didn't get to. No one wanted to come, so I was just sat there on my last day, and I was like, "Anyone goes to the pub?" And Chris was like, "Yeah, okay,
that'll be me." That's my middle name.
It's my leaving drinks was with someone I hadn't spoken to before.
And yeah, we were talking, and you said you wanted to set up a business, and it was really funny because all the conversations I had with Jacek, I was like, yes, we've been thinking of setting up that business. You'd have to do this, and you'd have to do this, and just unloaded on him all my ideas. And then Tom was like, normally that's a nightmare, but Tom was loving it, like asking me loads of questions, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. And so, yeah, well, that's another conversation for another day. But Jacek, how about yourself? What brought you to Clear Vision where we met?
That's quite interesting because I, as you said, Chris, like I always knew I will have my own business, and there are a few attempts in my life. Back at the uni, I started an alcohol delivery service. I was picking up people from the airports. Later on, I started a coffee company. I was importing coffee from Vietnam to Poland. And in the meantime, I had real jobs. I was at Google for some time. I was in the gaming industry, and I was working for one of the Atlassian partners where I met Chris. So yeah, it's quite a confusing story, but the thing is that I always had this thought on my mind, like I should have my own business. That's the destiny. That's how I will be happy and fulfill myself in this life. And yeah, meeting guys was like, I think it's kind of like you attract similar energies, and you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So we kind of like attracted each other. And yeah,
I'll just say for the record, Jacek didn't have that scary beard at the time.
And yeah, probably that's that's why we started the company. Now it would be 10 times more difficult.
Yeah.
But who knows? Tom is following my path. Like we'll see in a couple of weeks.
I don't know. I have grown a very long beard before, but I stopped at your stage because it got too messy. But we'll see what happens.
I am still praying and hoping the barber shops will open.
I always say
sometime
I don't.
Soon.
If security lets Jacek through the airport, I don't want to get on that plane.
That's why I'm not flying anymore.
So yeah, the origin story is like it's interesting to see. That's like the backgrounds in terms of that's like how we got to the day one of Old Street. The origin story of Old Street itself is interesting because we didn't all start at the same point in our life, in our careers. Everything led up to that, and we kind of found each other, and it was a discussion about, well, what should we do? And I was pretty focused on the idea of building apps. and Chris and Jacek, you knew Hatovo, and it started out with just some conversations a bit with them and this kind of like concept, but nothing was laid out at the start. We
I mean, me and Jacek had a few false starts. So meeting in Southampton as we did, we desperately trying to do anything we could. We started trying to do training courses. That was our first foray, a bit of a side gig, and we registered the domain at AtlassianWorldTour.com. And then about a month later, Atlassian announced that they were doing Atlassian Team Tour. And we got a very polite but very firm letter from their lawyers. I'll never forget it. It was thanking us for our enthusiasm for the Atlassian brand. But they'd like it back, please. And they're going to need us to hand over the domain and the website and the email and all of the above. And please comply within 12 hours or the emails will get more serious, was the veiled threat they didn't say. And I just immediately went, guys, we're walking away from this one. Fucking hell.
Well, it makes sense at the time. Like, you like you said, it's enthusiasm. Any other moment, it probably would have been okay. You just caught it a bit late.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we knew exactly what we wanted. And as you say, the big thing was meeting Hatovo. So as soon as we saw those gentlemen, Slovakian developers, very sharp, childhood friends, raised this wonderful development house with more than 100 employees, I think, even at the time. It's grown since then. Just especially me and Jacek not being technical people, knowing that was one of the key missing pieces we needed. As soon as they came and visited us at Clear Vision, I think we took them out for dinner every single night, right? Jacek, we knew we just need to get to know these guys.
Yeah, we knew that somehow, the right intuition. And I think the interesting common ground for all of us is like a lot of like failing. Like we tried so many things and failed, or it didn't work out, but we still like kept going. We didn't say, I tried to set up a business, it didn't work out, and that's it. I think that's a very important message to like everybody who's about to start something. Like probably you will fail many times.
I feel like a bit more of a narcissist. Like my biggest concern was always succeeding, because then I don't want to get to the end of the game too quickly. So like I remember like at Adaptist, I did all the accreditation exams and everything in my first year, and I got to the end and I was like, great. So what's next? And they're like, oh no, you've done everything. Don't do anything else. Just like do the same. Just carry on next year. And I was like, oh well, that terrifies me. The idea of like that.
Yeah, anything other than constantly moving and growing, it just absolutely terrifies me as well. I remember they started doing professional development plans at Clear Vision, and every time they set me a target, I'd add 20% and then make that my own target. And so every time I had one of these meetings, they're like, you're doing really well. I'm like, yeah, I know. What's next? Like, give me more. Like, I need a bigger challenge. I know I'm doing good. It's not enough. Give me more. Which was probably unpleasant for them to have to work with, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like from what we see now, from our perspective, it's hard to manage people like that. Particularly, the irony is like people like that need some structure, but they don't like the structure. So it's really hard. I don't think there could have been an offer they gave me or an option that would have satisfied me. It was just not possible. And also, you can't. I mean, one of the things that I looked at, it's like corporate cancer. If you have people that are not the right fit, it actually creates like weird pockets of unhappiness that otherwise people wouldn't be. So, I mean, I see it as you want to work with like-minded people that have similar values and goals, but you can't try and work with everybody.
It's the technical assholes, right? Like that so many software teams try and avoid. And we probably were all that at one point. I don't know, maybe not Jacek. He's always been charming.
My mother told me the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I got an interesting question. And what were our first impressions of one another when we first met?
Very first met. I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, so when I spoke to you, it was pick and choose. I felt that Chris, you had the history, you had like experience in terms of the business. What I liked is that life had already kicked most of it out of you, like in terms of like you'd been through so many experiences that like almost left was like, yeah, okay, we can do it. Like it was
I have had more businesses fail than most people will ever try. I
yeah, it was
promise you.
great.
And if it's
It was like,
succeeded, it's been immediately stolen by my ex-girlfriends.
yeah, and like the whole stories of getting heat stroke on the beach trying to clean it that day for the tourists and stuff. I think it's brilliant. So I got the impression that like you really knew what it meant to try hard, and also like you had an appreciation of what you wanted because you failed so many times that like you must know what you want after that. And I feel with Jacek it was more it's more skepticism because we didn't have any overlap in our experiences and also our roles. There was very little overlap. So I saw it as more of like skepticism from Jacek as like didn't quite know how it would fit with me and the company because at the time I came in as a slight outsider to the team. So that was interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's always the concern. I told you is like I know the value of good sales, and I know the value of good product, and I saw that in both. I think what I loved from you both was a bit younger, a bit more ambitious, and you're right. Like I had it kicked out of me a bit, but I still wanted it. So I just wanted to work with people that hadn't yet, but still had that youthful optimism. Life hadn't kicked them quite so hard. I remember first meeting Jacek and just being like, wow. Someone came out of his job interview at Clear Vision and immediately approached me and said, you have to meet this guy, Jacek, you're going to love him. So I immediately didn't like him because that sounded bad. What was it? Because Clear Vision, you get to do this brilliant, I love the idea, 10-minute pitch, not about work, just about who you are as a person or your interest or hobby, right? And so Jacek did this great thing where he just, his presentation was just him inside a bunch of supercars that he'd test drived for free by pretending to be a wealthy nobleman.
I never said anything. They just assumed
You never
I'm wealthy.
lied. Your personal assistant who called on your behalf lied for you. And yeah, my favorite story of that was when Jacek was too young to get insurance to drive the Rolls Royce, but managed to blag it anyway and was like, yes. And then while he was driving, he was like, oh shit, I'm driving a Rolls Royce uninsured. What happens if this crashes?
I cannot confirm or deny this story.
Yes. Someone you know.
If you see a man with this beard, don't give him a free test drive of your luxury sports
Give
car.
him the keys to anything. Yeah, I think the different age range was important because it was not just us. So I was the youngest in the team by quite a way, and then we had our experience at UN Jacek, and then Martin Marin and Tovo are slightly older as well. So we had the full spread. It wasn't just blind enthusiasm, which I got to bring to the table, like abject certainty that it would always work every time because I'd never seen anything else.
I didn't need someone like me. Like I was looking for someone I could argue with. I enjoy that, and I needed a yin to my yang, shall we say? And yeah, no, like I loved, just the passion, the enthusiasm. And it's often the case with sort of like a young bright spark such as yourself that you don't want to listen to someone 10 years older than you because you're like, I know you're just but you did actually listen, and even if we disagreed, I'm comfortable with that. It's just we were talking it out.
The phrase that we like to focus on is the strong opinions loosely held. Okay, so you can have strong opinions, but you can't hold on to them, all of them strongly. That's not a discussion then. That's just, belligerent ignorance, right? Belligerent ignorance.
Yeah, and I remember, you were just eager to get started on. You had a few ideas, and I talked through because me and Jacek had tried them or at least thought about them, and some of them needed, well, pretty much a call center to do, right? I was like, here's the problem with one of the ideas we discussed is that the best way I can see to grow that is to have a bunch of people cold calling. And with respect, Tom, you don't strike me as someone that wants to run a call center.
It was understanding the business model, and that's how we came to where we are now of being completely product focused. And that's not an accident. That was through discussions of, well, who do you want? What business do you want to be running? Okay, if it's a consultancy business, then that's services led. So you need to really, really care about building services team that, you fight for every meal. If you don't work that month, everyone starves and you lay the whole staff off. Like, that's consultancy, right? Cool. If we wanted, but we didn't want that.
And I think this was Clear Vision Adaptive's big concern when we started, because that's normally what happens when someone peels off and joins their own company, is they copy the same model. And they all worried, especially when we teamed up with you, that we'd be looking to make a services company. But we always knew, like, product scales, services don't.
And it's about full solution. So Adaptivist metric was their tagline was to be the biggest and best by every reasonable metric or every measurable metric. Which you can't be, but that was their goal. It was very clear that was the thing. And you can't just be a product company. Well, Atlassian kind of get away with it, but like, you can't just be a product company without the services if you want to scale beyond yourself. So we've chosen a specific path by saying product only, and we can scale outside of that, like having partners that do services for us. But by choosing to be who we are, we can't own the entire cake ourselves, right? We have to give pieces away to other people. So that's what we've chosen to do. But it was a very conscious decision, which is it's great to be so certain about something.
And that was why I was so sort of sure with the two of you. So one thing I'll say was, like, I remember just meeting Jacek and just watching him like haggle for everything, but always with a smile on his face. I've always said, like, an average salesman can negotiate what he wants from a deal, but only a Jacek can, like, have them smile after he's gotten exactly what he needed from them. And that's the key, right? Like, make them happy too. And yeah, I remember, God, we must have been in B&Q buying something desperately cheap to fix something we couldn't afford to fix. And I remember watching, Jacek just charm the hell out of all the people behind the till. And I just said, dude, you're going to be so massively successful. The pieces just fell into place. And it was likewise when I met Tom. I knew I wanted, because of Fotovo, I knew we had all the pieces we need to make a product company. But it wasn't until I heard Tom describe, like, his dream of being a product manager and all the passion you brought to that. I was like, oh, that is not the final piece, but the big one.
We sat in the pub one day and it was like, what do you want to bring to the team? Because it wasn't a push-pull. It wasn't, this is what we're kind of seeing with some interviews right now, is I don't disagree when it's like, here's what we need. And the person that effectively is being interviewed is just saying, yes. It's like, okay, like, great. So you just said yes, like, yes, I can do that. I can fill all the gaps. It's like, we don't want necessarily someone that's just like seeping into all the cracks and filling everything. It should be someone that's passionate about what they're doing. So yeah, I remember that conversation we had in that Brewdog pub in Shoreditch, and it was, I want to build a product team, but I want to be the interface between marketing and sales and the developers. I want to be the guy that sits in the middle and helps translate customer experience into code and helps the developers understand why we're building things, because users ask for crazy things, even though it's understandable if you can just increase that communication. So that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. Anything from you, Jacek?
I think I had a very similar impression. Like, first meeting Chris, I think we started like renting a house together a few weeks later, so you can it's escalated quickly. And
we were both staying in very unhappy houses, though, if you remember.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't, God, I'm not sure it was legal where you were staying.
I cannot confirm or deny.
And I had you get those Facebook memories, right? I had my housemate posting Post-it notes in every room about things she'd found which displeased her. So that was part of why we got along so well and were desperate to move in together so quickly.
Yeah. And then it was more interesting with Tom later on, because we had like this kind of clique formed, like a group of us. So it was more difficult for Tom, I guess, and to join later.
My way into that.
Yeah, but
you did, and that's what I want to talk about next time, actually. So I think it'd be very interesting to talk about that period, because I remember, how that felt, like Tom as the outsider, and then how he like ran ahead of us to prove his value. And then the interesting conversations we had about equity about that time, because I think that's very interesting for co-founder dating and deciding how to split the equity. So I think that'll be a good conversation for next episode.
Yeah, definitely talking about equity and how we see it, and understanding why we have equity, why it's important to us, and the big lie that is equity.
Yes. Well, that's the spoiler / the teaser.
That's the teaser, yeah.
But it's mostly bullshit. I'm amazed how much time co-founders spend talking about equity when ultimately it means nothing. Nothing.
It felt so important at the time, and then the realization now is that, like, what a joke. Like, it's so meaningless.
Yeah.
To be continued. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your co-founder candor radically.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to
See you next week, guys.
See you next week. Cheers, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.